Zbigniew Brzezinski. He was the Cold War strategist who, basically was the father of color revolutions. He was the guy who was responsible for the U.S. He lured the Soviet Union into Afghanistan, the Afghan trap. You read about Brzezinski. He was a Polish guy who just hated Russians. He was a Polish Catholic, and from the time he was a child, he was raised to just hate Russians. And he ended up, at Harvard, and he was first in Vancouver and then at Harvard, and he became this big Cold War geopolitical strategist. You read about Zbigniew Brzezinski. I mean, this is just a hateful man, and he didn't hate communism. He hated Russians. You read it. He hated Russians. And he saw, it fitted into years and years of Poland and Russia, fighting each other and having rivalries and such. And his daughter, right? The daughter of the man who basically, is more responsible than anyone else for the creation of Al-Qaeda. Well, she's on Morning Joe. Mika Brzezinski, that's her father, Zbigniew Brzezinski, right? The Cold War strategist, the man who bragged about, bringing Osama bin Laden to Afghanistan to fight the Soviet Union. I mean, you read about these people. It's fascinating. These people, I might add, Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Ben Rhodes, Samantha Power. These people are more important than our political leaders, I would say. Our political leaders are actors, right? They come out there, they smile for the cameras, they give their speeches, but the people in the back room, the smart guys, or smart women too, right? Samantha Power, right? I mean, it's smart men, smart women. The people who went to Harvard and Yale, those kind of people who sit behind the leaders and come up with their strategies they're the ones that's important to understand. They are very, very important to understand. What motivates them? Where did they come from? What is their background? Why are they the way they are? Those people are very, very important. We don't see them very much. And there's probably a lot of them we don't even know about. The ones we know about are the ones that are a little more prominent. Ben Rhodes, that writer who worked with, Obama or whatever. That guy is very important. That guy was negotiating with members of the Castro family in Canadian hotels. Read about Samantha Power. Read about Zbigniew Brzezinski. Read about Henry Kissinger. These people are far, far more important. These are the people that tell the presidents and all of them, Jimmy Carter said he was a student of Zbigniew Brzezinski, right? And that these folks have more influence than you would think, and the way they see the world is often far more vulgar and disgusting. Leo Strauss, right, was the mentor to so many of the people that were in Republican and Democratic administrations, right? The father of neoconservatism, Leo Strauss, the other father of neoconservatism, Irving Kristol. Read about these people. Find out who they are and their motivations. My new book that will be coming out soon, it's in the works, long way off. It's going to have a lot about that. I've done a lot of research. One thing that fascinates me, folks, is you can look at certain personalities, right? The ruling class of the United States, when they are picking out people to be leaders, they look for certain personality types. It's very fascinating. Very fascinating. There is a psychology to what makes an effective political leader. They talk about how we've had a lot of presidents in recent years who have no fathers, right? And there's a lot written about that, right? Barack Obama, dreams from my father, right? Fascinating, right? We talk about Bill Clinton, right? That there's something about the personality of a man who grew up without a father in his household that makes something that the ruling class likes in a political leader, right? Fascinating, I think, right? I have been particularly interested in a certain profile. First of all, the U.S. criminal justice system. Let's talk about this, right? The U.S. criminal justice system. Stop watching police shows. That's fiction. That is just pure fiction. Stop watching police shows, right? Like 90% of cases, 99% of cases do not go to trial in the United States. Almost every case, every criminal case, almost every single criminal case in the United States doesn't go to trial, right? It's plea bargained. So if somebody goes to trial in the United States, they're probably innocent. Why would you risk what they call the trial penalty, right? Google the phrase trial penalty. If you go to trial in the United States, the judge is angry that you made him work, that you cost the taxpayers so much money. And they call it the trial penalty, right? And that your sentence will be far greater if you actually go to trial. So the chances that someone would risk the trial penalty and not make a plea bargain like almost every criminal case in the United States is very, 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 very rare, right? When a case goes to trial in the United States, something's off. Now, in some states, they have like a 3-strike law. So if it's your third strike, your third felony, you automatically get 25 years. Yeah, they'll go to trial whether they're innocent or guilty. So there are some exceptions. But if a trial takes place in the United States, if a trial happens in the USA, if someone's actually going to have a jury trial and going to risk the trial penalty, if someone is going to put themselves through that, that's years of your life. Years of your life. You're not knowing if you're going to prison, the amount of money that you'll spend. If someone is going to risk going through the horrendous nightmare of having a jury trial, right, of spending all their money and all their relatives' money on attorneys, of spending a year of their life waiting to go to trial, weeks in the trial. I mean, if someone is going to put themselves through that, they're probably innocent. I mean, there's other cases, right? Really wealthy people, do you think Harvey Weinstein cares? He's wealthy enough. It's not a big deal. He'd rather go to trial than not, but for the most part, if an average American goes to trial, they are probably innocent. You would never see that on American TV, right? On American TV, the cop shows, oh, no. The courts are so easy on the criminals. The criminals always get off on technicalities, blah, blah. It's malarkey. That's not the case. So first of all, if someone goes to trial, the chances are they're innocent, right? Now, there are exceptions. Harvey Weinstein, they're wealthy enough, or it's their third strike in Florida or California, and, that's a big issue. But if someone's going to trial in the United States, if they are risking having a jury trial, which is very expensive, which is very scary, which takes years of their life, all of their money, if someone is risking having a jury trial in the United States, there's a very, very good chance that they are innocent. However, the conviction rate in American courts is ridiculously high. People are almost always found guilty, right? In New York City, the borough of the Bronx has a 67% conviction rate at trial, right? That's not 2/3, right? That's slightly more than 2/3. And it is one of the lowest in the country. 67%, Most parts of this country, conviction rates are 80%, 90%. If you go to trial, the chances of you being acquitted are slim to none. Why? Because prosecutors are the government, and they have the money. They have the money, they have the evidence, they have the apparatus. Furthermore, police lie on the stand all the time. Don't take my word for it. Read what Alan Dershowitz has written. Everyone knows this. Police get up, and it's like your obligation when you're a police officer to lie on the stand. And they never get prosecuted. Why? Because the people who decide who to prosecute for perjury are the prosecutors. So police get up and lie on the stand, and all these Americans have watched police cop shows, so they believe police officers, and police just make up stuff on the stand all the time. You read about police perjury, it's a whole thing. People have documented this. Police officers lie on the stand all the time. Prosecutors have way more money and resources at their hands. Plus, Americans have been brainwashed by cop shows on TV, and they're convinced that criminals get off too easy, and and they have this false view of the police system. So the criminal justice system in the United States is a joke, right? It is just like any other country, really. I mean, it looks better, but in essence, it's the same thing. When the government wants to go after somebody, they go after them. And maybe if the person's rich enough and well-connected enough and has the time and the optics, and they can get off. But for the most part, they don't. Right? That's basically the U.S. legal system. And that's how it is in most countries in the world. And in most countries, it's a little more honest than that. In most countries, it's, if the state comes after you, you better be well-connected enough and rich enough to get yourself off, or you're screwed. That's how it is in the United States, basically. If they decide to start prosecuting you and come after you, they come after you. And if you're well-connected enough, and sometimes you can get justice, but for the most part, you're screwed. That's basically the U.S. criminal justice system. And it's a joke. And it is designed to look like it's not. And the cop shows and Law and Order and all of that is a lot of propaganda. And it's propaganda that's key in making it happen, mind you, right? If it weren't for that propaganda, jurors might know what I'm saying. Most jurors most Americans have no clue. Most Americans believe that every criminal goes to trial because they don't want to go to jail. Most Americans have no idea what I'm saying because they've been watching Law and Order their whole life. But the reality is that if somebody goes to trial, they're probably innocent. Yet 90% of people, in most cases, in the Bronx, it's only 67%. So only 2/3 of people are convicted at trial. I mean, it's really, really ridiculous, right? That said, criminal prosecutors in the United States are a special brand of person, right? Because these are people who really, really take pleasure in harming people who are probably innocent. Let's be real, right? If they're going to go to trial, if you're a courtroom prosecutor, right? You're a courtroom prosecutor. The chances are something's wrong with you, right? If you know anything about how the U.S. criminal justice system works, something's wrong with you, right? I mean, I've talked to former prosecutors, and they will tell you straight up how rigged it is against the defense. They don't care. They have a sadism about them. They have a desire to punish, to harm, to injure. And a lot of what they train these prosecutors to do is to help cover that up and help basically, try to conceal that desire on their part, because if people see it, jurors might acquit because they can tell how much they want to harm people. But Amy Klobuchar, right, who's running for president right now, in order to convince jurors to, imprison African Americans who are on trial, where she was, why would any person go to trial unless there's something wrong if they're going on trial? To scare jurors, make them terrified of African Americans and gangs and whatever, and vote to convict. And she doesn't know who the president of Mexico is, right? Amy Klobuchar. Kamala Harris, right? She was a prosecutor in California. Her whole life, she's been a prosecutor. She concealed evidence to keep people on death row. She locked people up for smoking weed and then joked about the fact that she smoked weed all through college, right? What's going on here? It takes a certain type of personality to be a prosecutor in the United States, right? And they do their jobs fanatically, right? It's all about stats. They want those stats. If anyone's acquitted, they've failed, right? If somebody's life isn't destroyed by their work, they have failed. They want stats, and they want to harm people. Why do they want it? What's going on here, right? What's the issue here? But in a legal system where people only go to trial if they're probably innocent, but yet you have, massively high conviction rates. What is going on here? Now, what I think is fascinating. So Kamala Harris, her father was a communist. Is a communist, right? He's a Marxist economist. She hates her father. Right? Her parents divorced when she was 7 years old. Her father has denounced her politically and said she's beholden to her donors. She talks about her mother a lot. She does not speak about her father. She's a prosecutor, and she tries to keep innocent people on death row. She started locking up the parents. I don't know if people saw the clip of her locking up the parents of truant school children. And she laughs about it uncomfortably.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco.
Her audience doesn't giggle with her. There's nothing funny about that, right? Sure, kids should be in school, but when low-income children are not in school, how does putting their parents in jail help the situation? It doesn't, right? It's demented. But before she starts that, she says,
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing.
What does this have to do with you, Kamala? This isn't about you. But you're making decisions about who should go to jail because you wouldn't be anywhere without your education. Something's not right here. Something's not right. Kamala Harris, you watch her mocking protesters. But, you got to think about that moment during the debate. All right, that moment during the debate where she yells at Joe Biden.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject...
That little girl was me. Very interesting. Kamala Harris, there's something psychological here. Kamala Harris doesn't really care about those kids who are truant from school. She's angry at their parents for not being good parents, right? She's angry at their parents for not being good parents. So she wants to punish those parents for not sending their kids to school because she wouldn't be there because that little girl was me. And she's got this pent-up anger. Right? Think about it. right? There's something going on there. She's angry with her own parents, most likely with her own father. And that rage, that desire to punish and destroy, seems to have motivated Kamala's entire life existence. And she's up there and she's thinking about herself. That little girl was me. She has a t-shirt with a picture of her as an elementary school child. There's some childhood trauma there. There's some rage at her father, rage at her own parents, and she has spent her entire life trying to get revenge for it in this demented way by putting all kinds of people in jail, by trying to keep innocent men on death row. That's Kamala Harris. But fascinatingly, Amy Klobuchar, same story. I mean, she's from a different ethnic background. She's not half Jamaican and half Indian. She's actually Eastern European, Minnesota, criminal prosecutor for years, right? Domestic violence, parents divorced, her father was an alcoholic, beat her mother. She didn't speak to her father for a decade until he got sober. And what did she do? She spent her career desperately trying to punish other people, put them in jail, trying to destroy other people's lives, desperately trying to do it, scare jurors about, gangs and appeal to their internal racial fear of African Americans. Oh my God, get these jurors who don't understand that if someone's going to trial, the chances are they're probably innocent. Gangs are going to kill them, and rap music and appeals to their inner fears puts them in jail, right? Why does she do that? Well, I have a feeling that if you were to get to know Amy Klobuchar, which I don't, I'm just speculating, it's a lot like Kamala Harris.
And that little girl was me.
There's this internal rage, right? Just like Kamala is clearly very angry at her own parents, especially at her own father. Amy Klobuchar is very angry at her father. The pent-up rage. She wants to destroy. She wants to tear people down. Same thing. Samantha Power. Now, Samantha Power was never a prosecutor. Samantha Power, though, born in Ireland, displays signs of narcissism from the time she's a child, is looking in the mirror and trying desperately to have an American accent and lose her Irish accent, wants to move to the United States because she thinks it's the land of freedom, does move to the United States. Her father does not come with her. Her father is an alcoholic and eventually dies of an alcohol, basically drinks himself to death in Ireland. What does she do? She grows up to be an international prosecutor. Her entire life revolves around, demonizing Serbia, building the case for war. She's a warmonger, right? And she goes around and she tries her hardest to build a case for war against Yugoslavia. She's responsible for invading Libya. She lobbies within the White House for invading Libya. It's always strong male leaders that she's angry with. Gaddafi, Milosevic, Assad. It's always these strong male leaders. She just wants to punish them. And just like Kamala Harris doesn't care about those school kids who are truant. It's not about helping those kids. It's about making those parents pay. Right? Samantha Power doesn't care about the Libyans. They're far worse off. They're dying. But it doesn't care. It's about making Gaddafi pay. Right? She doesn't care about the Serbians or the people of Serbia. No, it's about making Milosevic pay. Right? And again, I have a feeling that if you get to know Samantha Power, you get to know Amy Klobuchar, get to know Kamala, it's about...
And that little girl was me.
There's this pent-up rage at a father figure. Right? There's an abusive father figure, perhaps. I don't know what went on, but there's rage at a father figure. There's a broken home and a broken marriage. There's being raised by a mother who has resentment against the father. There's baggage, and there's this desire to punish. There's this built-in desire to create chaos and punish, right? They don't care. Kamala didn't care about those kids, Samantha Power doesn't care about Libyans, right? She bombed and destroyed their country. They had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. She doesn't care. She's mad at Gaddafi. She doesn't care about the people in former Yugoslavia. She's mad at Milosevic. She sees these powerful male leaders, these populists, these anti-imperialists, and she sees them like that father that she had who, drank himself to death and abandoned her and her mother and when they went to the United States, right? Same with Amy Klobuchar, right? Same with Kamala, right? They want to destroy. They want to hurt people. They want revenge, right? And they want to destroy other people's lives, and it's rooted in some kind of weird childhood trauma where they're sitting there. And I swear, when Kamala gets up there and says, I wouldn't have been anywhere if it weren't for my education, that little girl was me, Joe Biden. That's what it's about. There's some daddy issues going on here. This is an interesting psychological profile of a narcissistic woman, which Kamala and Amy and Samantha Power totally are. When Samantha Power, talks about looking in the mirror, you know what I mean, and working hard to lose her American accent. Oh, she's narcissistic women with father issues who have a desire to create chaos and punish. That is the profile. That is the profile of a female politician, right? This is people working out their wounds. Just like on some level, Obama is probably trying to work out, he writes a whole book basically admitting that he's motivated, the dreams from my father, black identity, all these political leaders. This isn't just about women. It's about men also. But they all have some, these are people that are damaged. These are people that have suffered. Right? And they're damaged, they're not doing well, they've suffered, they're in pain, they're in deep emotional pain. And it seems like that's the profile of who you want when you want war. I mean, it's fascinating, right? That when you see Hillary Clinton.
We came, we saw, he died.
And she's so excited about killing Gaddafi. What's that about? What's that about? Think about it, right? This is a way to manipulate people psychologically. The CIA, all of them, you read about the psychological studies that they've done. Read about how they've worked on how to manipulate leaders, how to manipulate them. They talk about Ronald Reagan wouldn't read anything. So they would give Ronald Reagan videotapes and show him like VHS tapes of world events to like manipulate him to do what he wants to do. The people who really have the power in the government, people who really have the power in the government aren't the politicians. The politicians are the actors. They're the front man. It's those smart guys in the back room. It's Ben Rhodes. It's Zbigniew Brzezinski. It's Henry Kissinger. It's Samantha Power. It's Anne Marie Slaughter. Those are the people that really have the power. Those are the people who really have the power. The ones who never get elected. The ones who go up through Harvard and get their degree, you know what I mean? And they go to Harvard and Yale and they write papers that put forward positions. They get them all kinds of grant money and foundation. And pretty soon they're sitting in the back room with Obama or sitting in the back room with Trump or sitting in the back room with Bill Clinton or Jimmy Carter writing out foreign policy. Those are the people who really have the power. And if you can understand psychologically what motivates them, if you can understand why these people do what they do, you can understand how the world works, right? I mean, this profile of a female prosecutor politician, right? And their love for war, and their obsession with punishing men, right? Think about the man, the innocent man that Kamala Harris worked so hard to keep on death row. Why was she so determined to see this innocent man die? Why? What drives that kind of pathological behavior? What drives it, right? Well, it's the same thing that probably, was very useful to empire and imperialism in driving Samantha Power into the fanatical desire to see Libya bombed and destroyed. Maybe the same with Hillary Clinton, right? We don't know. But they are masters of manipulation. They've studied, they have psychological profiles. And people, when someone runs for president, their whole life story comes out there. We learn everything there is to know about them. And you can bet that they know way more than we do. They know way, way more than we do. Fascinating to think about. Psychology, right? That's the thing. People want to dismiss psychology. People want to see psychology in individual ways. But psychology is very important, right? What motivates world leaders to do what they do? What motivated Roosevelt to do what he did? I mean, Roosevelt, my goodness, right? Somebody from one of the richest families in the world. Somebody, what in the world motivated Roosevelt to do such good things? Right? What motivated him? Well, a lot of people trace it back to his teacher, Endicott Peabody. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He went to a boarding school, and it was a very liberal boarding school, very progressive. They very much allowed the kids to learn on their own. They gave the kids lots of affection, and the principal of the boarding school that Franklin Delano Roosevelt went to was a socialist. A member of the Socialist Party of the United States, Endicott Peabody, right? And at the time in the United States, our education system was even more authoritarian and militarized than it is now, and, you know, corporal punishment and all that. But the fact that Roosevelt went to a very, very liberal, progressive elementary school taught by a socialist, where kids were treated with so much kindness and dignity, I think that, more than anything, had a long-term effect on Franklin Roosevelt, right? Who's to say what Roosevelt would have done if he had grown up in a different atmosphere? But think about the impact that Endicott Peabody, the socialist Christian minister, had on the young Franklin Roosevelt. Think about it, right? I mean, Roosevelt's personality was imprinted by the fact that he went to an elementary school where children were treated in a very, very progressive and loving and kind way, and basically taught to have socialistic and communal values. Right? Fascinating to think about. Think about it. I mean, think about it. Think about how much this socialist school principle probably impacted human history. The fact that somebody would eventually be the president of the United States went to an elementary school taught by a very progressive, kind, loving, socialist Christian man named Endicott Peabody. It's fascinating to think about. The psychology of world leaders, understanding what motivates them to do what they do, is very, very, very important. It's very, very important. You can't underestimate all of this.